Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Odin here. It's Sunday evening. You know, that means I'm going to be making a video for y'all. Um, for anybody who wants to check this out. I know I have a dwindling viewership, but nonetheless, devoted viewership that does come and check out the videos every once in a while. So, I appreciate you all very much. They're just my ramblings. They're just me talking about random shit, mostly to do with the comics I'm making, the life I'm living, and the world around me as I see it. So it's nothing special. It's just me, stream of conscious, kind of going off about random shit. But I've got my glass of whiskey and I'm feeling good. It was a good weekend. But before I get into any of that, I want you to go down into the description there. Look at the links that I drop below. We have signups for Magnificent Bastards #2 and for the Splash, and we also have a campaign on Fund My Comic for reprints or second prints of Unconditional Shove Volume I. I would highly encourage you, especially if you have not already, because you can only sign up once, but to go sign up for Magnificent Bastards #2. It's a great book. That's James Rock, my business partner and friend and brother, and sign up for his book. The number one, I'll also have that link down below. Issue number one. If you didn't check it out, you're missing out on one of the stories that I found the most compelling in my time in the crowd-funded indie comic sphere that I've now become a part of. And it's part of the reason why James and I work together is because I read that and went, yeah, I think this guy gets it. He's an excellent writer. The humor's there. It's a fun story. It'll get you intrigued and really whet the palate for issue number 2, which is launching at the end of the month, but is in sign up right now. So I'll have the link to the digital download, which is free for a limited time, of issue number 1, and the sign up page for issue number 2. Get signed up, get alerted for when the campaign actually goes live. Read the first one if you haven't yet, and really see what you're missing. And issue 2 picks up right where issue 1 left off, but is, I would say, better. I'd say it's funnier. So I'm very excited for issue 2. Now, I work with James very closely, so I know the story. He can't help it but just tell me the entire thing. I know all of it, but I am biased, of course, but I highly suggest it. I think, it's a little adult. It's definitely, like potty humor and adult humor, but the artwork is great. Scotch 51 has taken over the art duties, and the writing is great. It's a lot of fun. The beats are fun, and it just flows, and by the time you read it, you'll have laughed your ass off. You'll laugh, you cry. It's a feel-good story. No, it's not really, but it is a fun story, and where it's all heading is even funner. So you got to jump on that train sometime. I would say do it now because it is worth it. So check out the issue number 1 digital download if you haven't yet. It's free, and then sign up for issue 2, which is going to be launching at the end of the month. And then the Splash, which is also our business partner and very good friend, Sebastian, out in Germany. One of the premier artists on the scene in indie comics right now, and this is entirely him. It's all the artwork is him, the story by him, and it is a children's book, but it's all ages. Anybody can pick this up and enjoy it, even if you just want to check out this beautiful artwork that he throws down. He basically, even in black and white, he paints, and it's fantastic. He's so good. Highly suggest checking that out. The Splash, which also will have signups, that will launch about a month after Magnificent Bastard. So we're trying to stagger these things out because we've got several books before the end of the year besides those two, including Unconditional Shove Volume 2, including Cascadia, including the one that you see on the image here, Kill Them Dead, including Paper Machete. There's lots of cool shit coming that we're hopefully at least getting all of these things into sign up before the end of the year. But we have we're really focused on the first two right now. So Magnificent Bastards and The Splash, they have the signups. They're ready to, just about ready to launch. So get yourself signed up. And I know both those books are very near complete. I think both are more than 3/4 of the way. And if I remember right, Skunk Artworks told me that The Splash is just, I think he said just one more page and it's finished. So very close to completion. By the time they launch, they'll almost be out the door. So we're excited for those. And I think you should be too. If you don't know what you're missing, then why don't you sign up? It costs you nothing. Just throw your email address. We don't spam you. We don't send tons of emails. We'll just get alerted for when we launch. It also helps us understand the interest, helps us gauge what we're doing. So please sign up for those. Anyway, all that business out of the way. Let's get on to talking random shit like I like to do. So, before I do anything, this page here is the first page that I drew for Kill Them Dead. And I have all these pages here, and a little later I'm going to go through all the pages that are done for Kill Them Dead, try to build a little more excitement for it, and talk about it a little bit more. Eventually, and this happens with all the projects I work on, I show a lot of artwork at the front to try to build a hype. But there does come a time where, it's too much. It's too much spoiler. People who are actually interested maybe don't want to know exactly what's going on. But I try to share a lot to get hype, to get people excited. Like, this is what it's going to look like. This is what we're telling. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But the weekend was great. The weekend was great. I only had my youngest daughter. And so I felt bad for her. So her mom dropped her off early at my house. Now she's old enough to stay at home by herself. But found out later she didn't have a way to communicate. So her mom dropped her off, and I have a Ring camera on my front doorstep, and so I'm at work and my notifications are going off because I keep going in and out. She's grabbing her backpack, going back inside, and it's just letting me know there's someone at your front door. And I see your mom driving away. Like, I can watch live. I'm like, oh, there they are. They got in just fine because they know where the spare key is, all that shit. So she gets in and their mom drives away. And then I get another notification. Someone at your front door. And it's my daughter walking outside, looking around. And as she walks in, I see, she's old enough to stay home, but she's still pretty young. And I see tears in her eyes. I'm like, oh no. So I'm trying to text her and say, hey, I saw that you arrived. I'll be home when I'm done with work. Excited to see you. All that stuff. No responses, no nothing. And then, so I texted her mom. I'm like, she looked like she was looking for you, but she was crying when she walked outside. Her mom said she was upset about something earlier that day. So I was like, oh, okay. She's like, she'll be fine. I'm like, okay. And then I text her mom again. I'm like, but she's not answering my texts. And she's like, no, it's just about this thing earlier. She's probably talking to her friend or something like that. But I'm like, but it kind of looked like she was looking for you, like she forgot something. Anyway, her mom gets home and she's like, oh, crap, she left her phone in the car and she didn't bring her laptop this time. So she's at my house. I don't have a landline phone. She's here by herself with no way to communicate. And, then her mom felt bad. She's like, I felt bad. Like, that's why she was looking for me. Because she had a rough day before that. But it was about to get a lot better. So anyway, I had no way to communicate with her. I tried to, I actually did leave work a little early because I'm like, my daughter's there by herself. She's sad. She's, there's not much. She didn't have her laptop. She can entertain herself, I'm sure. And there's food. But anyway. So I get here, but I knew the story. Her mom had already told me. But I get home. I see her and I'm like, hey, and she's like, did you see what was on the coffee table? And I'm like, no, I didn't see that. Even though I knew what it was, but so she was really excited because she's gotten so close a bunch of times. and it's always fallen really short. So she got straight A's on her report card, and she's always had like a B or B plus in math. And math is a sticker for a lot of people, like unless you're just 100% suited for mathematics, and some people are, it's hard to get a really good grade in math. I know that. But I have a deal with my daughters. It's been going since they started middle school. I said, middle school, I'll give you $100 if you get straight A's. High school, I'll give you 300. I'm trying to set the bar high and give them some incentive. My dad did the same thing for me, and I rarely took him up on it. But I was trying, and I'm like, hey, if you do it, it's worth it. I'll throw down. So she was very excited about that. And she also got a honor roll medal and stuff like that. So she was just killing it, but she had a rough day, and she was home by herself for like 5 hours. So anyway, when I walked in, she was excited, and we celebrated. I gave her her money, and then we also went and spent it, and it was good. But that's how it started. We had a great time this weekend, and dropped her off, and yeah, that was my weekend. It was really, really good. The other really cool thing is I got some new books. So she wanted to go to the comic shop and spend some of her money, which made me very happy. It's not a lot of arm twisting to get me to the comic book shop. So got the stuff out of my pull list. I grabbed some other stuff. I also got a new crowdfunded book that I'm excited to talk about as well. So let's see what we got here. Yeah. So this one was not in my long box. I'm excited to check it out. It's called Golgotha Motor Mountain. And the artwork looked cool. Excited to check it out. I don't know. It's a IDW book. So we'll see. Yeah, it looks cool. We'll give it a shot. I'm not going to linger too long on these because this camera, it doesn't mind the pencils too much, but like really strong imagery, sometimes it freezes my camera. And if I get this far in the video and my camera freezes, I get really pissed because I have to start over or just sit there with like a stupid image frozen. So I also got this. I got another Conan book too, but I'm more excited about the new Savage Sword, which they seem to fix the grayscale issue. This is much easier to read. It's not so stark. And so, very excited for that. That's the new Titan Savage Sword of Conan #2. I did like #1. There was just a lot of issues with the darkness of the grayscale that they used on the artwork. The artwork looked good, but there were some elements that there was a lot of stuff that looked like like 3D assets or whatever that they talk about, but this one looks very hand done. It's almost, maybe they scrambled after hearing some complaints, but it came out pretty quick after the first one. But I like that they, whether it was them hearing the fan outcry or just they knew to go that direction, I like that they fixed that. There was no, because the thing is, I like gray wash. All of the old Savage Sword of Conan's had gray wash a lot, and it was just used, like the new one looked like it was like colored imagery that they just turned to gray tone, and then it was like way too dark. Half the time it was really hard to see what was going on. It really pissed me off. So I'm excited to dive into that. And this one I'm about halfway through and I'm really enjoying it. But that was Nosfero, the Crypt Walker from Shantanjeti, who one of my favorite people in this indie comic sphere that we live in. And I'm going to show some of this. All hand painted, which, I talk about a lot of the books that we're doing that with. But just beautiful imagery. The story's compelling. It's very based on H.P. Lovecraft lore, with a hero who's like fighting against the old ancient eldritch horrors. And so yeah, it's really enjoyable. That's been a great book, and so far I could say, and I don't think it's going to change to where I just totally change my opinion. That's been a very big hit. Like in the crowdfunding, I've bought a lot of crowdfunded books, and the last two that I've gotten have been hits. I've really enjoyed them. Nosfero and Judex. Judex was a lot of fun, and I really, really liked it. Again, the artwork was phenomenal. The writing was good. Everything was well paced and fun, intriguing, and so both books, I'm like, oh, it's great to get two hits in a row because I'll usually get a letdown somewhere, and it's fine. I take chances on a lot of books, but these ones were both hits. So Nosfero, The Crypt Walkers by Shanthan Jetty. He did virtually everything. Lettering by Eric Weathers. Outside of that, I think Shant did pretty much everything. And then Judex, I can never remember the artist's name, but it was written by Michael Odin, as I call the other Odin, or as Mo calls him, Ogden, and released through Global Frequency, which is Neff, who did edits and published it. So that was really cool. And also what was really cool, so Michael Odin, like I said, the other Odin, that's his last name. I assume that's his proper last name. I don't know for sure. But again, people probably don't know if Odin is my real biological first name, which it is. But maybe some people think it's a moniker, or not a moniker, but a pseudonym, or something like that. But no, it's my actual first name. I've got nothing to hide. My name is my name. Odin Dasco, that's me. I use it everywhere. But I think that's his actual last name. Now, he spells it O-D-E-N, and I spell my first name O-D-I-N. It would be interesting if I had his last name with my first name. It'd be Odin, two different spellings. But I saw him on Dave Brink's channel, Genuine Comics, and they were going through different campaigns and kind of picking them apart, but for constructive reasons. They were trying to see where people could improve, or what works, what doesn't. Just looking at campaigns. I've been on streams where we do that before, and it's you'll riff on it a little bit, but you are generally being constructive. Because I was in the chat on that, and Mo Biggs was in the chat, who Mo will definitely riff on everything, which is great. I love him for it. But when I get in there with him, I can't help but piggyback on some of that shit talking energy. But as I thought about it, I'm like, well, I don't want to be rude to anybody, because I really do want people to do well. So, but I was thinking about it. I'm like, if my campaign had the errors that I'm joking about with these people, I would hope people are like pointing it out and like talking shit, kind of. Because it's worth it. It's the only way to really get your attention half the time. But anyway, it was good to see Michael Odin and Dave Brink doing that show together. I enjoyed it. But it made me think of the name, because that sometimes happens. I remember Dean James, the Comic Mate. I think it's Comics Mate. He was talking about Odin, and it was with somebody that I used to stream with a lot, and he goes, my Odin. It was like I had to make the distinction of which Odin you're talking about, because Michael Odin goes by Odin a lot, and like I said, Mo calls him Ogden, which is like a funny little, it's his thing. It's his little thing he does. But yes, Odin is my biological first name. It's what my dad named me, and that's what I've been, Odin Dasco. But full disclosure, 3/4 of my life, maybe more, uh, for the most part, people knew me as my middle name, basically. So, or a version of my middle name. So I went by Tommy my whole life. Pretty much my whole life. All my school years, I was Tommy. Now, I would tell people, hey, my real name's Odin. You know, that would just be like a thing I would tell people. But nobody called me Odin unless they were trying to be smartass or something. Nobody called me Odin. Everybody called me Tommy, except my father. My father named me Odin. He was the only one who always called me Odin. And even when everyone else called me Tommy, he would call me Odin. And I think a lot of it was my parents divorced when I was like 3 or 4. And I lived with my mom full time and saw my dad like weekends and stuff. But my mom, I don't know if she insisted or whatever, but so, you know, I'm a little kid. I just go with whatever they say, you know, but everybody called me Tommy. And so she got her pick of the names. So my dad named me Odin. My mom named me Thomas. And to everybody, I was Tommy. Which may be a surprise to some of you. You've only known me as Odin. But as I got older, I wondered if I should start going by Odin. You know, I was like, well, you know, that's my name, right? But I remember as it was like 4th grade, I was starting at a new school. And so it's a new school. I didn't know any of the students. And we were standing outside the doorway to get into the class. And it was outside, like literally outside on the sidewalk, standing by the doorway to get into the class, first day. And it had a list of student names so you'd know if you were in the right place or not, right? And so it said, here's your teacher, here's all the students should be in the class. Well, we were waiting outside forever because the teacher was getting shit ready or whatever. And I'm standing there with a bunch of kids I don't know, just kind of being quiet because I was a very quiet kid. And I hear them like reading off the names, and everybody's kind of like, oh, yeah, it's you. Hey, how's it going? You know, because they remember each other from last year, or maybe they saw each other over the summer. I knew none of these kids. I was just standing there, and I remember they got to my name, and they're like, Odin Dasco. What the fuck kind of weird name is that? Like, these kids, there was no, like nowadays, kids might know because of the popularity of the Thor comic movies and stuff. But at that time, none of these kids knew Odin, and they just thought it was a weird name. And I remember they were kind of riffing on it, and I just kind of like shrunk back, like, well, yeah, poor sucker with a weird name, right? So I just kind of went, well, whatever. And after a while, I also really liked the idea of it being special to my dad. Like, my dad's the only one who calls me Odin. Everybody else, you all call me Tommy. But my dad, that's his name for me. That's the name he gave me. And he's the only one who gets to call me that. And so I really went by that for most of my life. That didn't really change until I started playing music. And the first band I was in, he was like, oh, Odin, that's too cool. You got to go by that. And I was like, okay, I'll go by that. And so on that album artwork, it said Odin Dasco, and all the notes of the album we made, the one album we made, said Odin. Next bigger band I got into, and I still kind of went by Tommy, but it was like, oh, for the music stuff, just go by Odin. The next band I was into, the guy was like, we're not like Viking metal, just go by Tommy, you know, that sounds cool. And I always did think it sounded cool, so I was like, yeah, Tommy. And then the last really successful band I was in, they're like, nah, you gotta go by Odin. And that just became like, that's when it really kind of like took popularity. It was like, because that band got more successful. And I always knew somebody who only knew me from the music scene because they would call me Odin. Everybody else called me Tommy. And to the point where I could like sign legal documents as Tommy. It was like, that's my name. That's what I go by, even though my biological first name was Odin. And then even still, like when I met somebody new, I'm like, yeah, I'm Tommy. It really wasn't until my father passed away 3 years ago on January 1st. Well, 2 years ago on January 1st. Feels like 3 years ago because it's New Year's Day. But that I just kind of went, you know, that's my name. You know, it was special to me that my dad was the only one who called me that. But I kind of felt like when he passed away, that was me. Like, I'm taking the mantle of the name you gave me. I'm finally the paterfamilias. You know, I am the elder statesman of my legacy, you know. And so I went, okay, I'm taking the name that my dad gave me. So I never really went by Tommy after that. There's plenty of people who still call me Tommy. To this day, lots of people. And not just Tommy. I've had so many nicknames throughout the years. Whenever you say that, it sounds like, yeah, what were those? Yeah, like funny ass shit-talking nicknames, which some of them were, but most of them were derivatives of Tommy. Like Tommy has a lot of nicknames associated with it, whatever anyone wants to add to it. So I've had people who insist every time they saw me, like Tommy Gun, and other people every time they saw me, Tom Cat or Tommy the Cat, Tommy Two Tone. I had one guy that I worked with. Every time I saw him, he'd say Lee. He called me Lee, which is basically Tommy Lee. And then it was funny because I worked with it, and I actually dated her for a little while too, which is funny. And she had like really big tits too. But Pam, and he called her Lee as well. So it was like Pamela Lee and Tommy Lee. But he called me Lee. I've had people call me TD. You know, people just do the initials, TD. I've had plenty of friends call me OD. I had one really close friend. Every time he saw me, he's like, OD, what's up? And try to think of any others. Tommy Two-Tone, Tommy the Cat, Tommy Gun, Tommy Boy. That came up quite a bit. So I had all those nicknames. Not many to do with Odin. The closest would be OD. And then once I went by Odin, like, I haven't really had any nicknames, but everyone just called me Odin. But the point being, is what's in a name, you know? Like when they would name like a Native American or something, they would be like, wait till you were like a certain age, and they're like, this is your temperament, you know, we're gonna name you after your quirks, your idiosyncrasies, you know. So it'd be like, you know, runs with beavers or something, you know. But they gotta like wait to see what your temperament is. But sometimes you like grow into a name or you aspire, and that was kind of the thing with Odin. It was like, it was special to my dad. And after my dad passed away, I was like, that's the name he gave me. That's who I am. That's who I am. And I thought it sounded cooler, you know, to be quite honest. And some people insisted on calling me Tom, like because they didn't like putting E on the end because that sounds like a kid thing. And so even to this day, I have friends who call me Tom because they just can't bring themselves to say Tommy, you know. And they were like, Tom. And then some people call me Thomas or Tomas. My brother-in-law always called me Tomas, and for a long stretch he called me Nomas because he's Mexican. That's why he'd say Tomas. But he's Mexican, so he'd call me Noma, which means no more. And that cracked me up. So I've had like the funny nicknames too. But my favorite one, because you get friends and like you make fun of their names. We had this one friend, and its last name was Benedict, you know, which is not always the best last name anyway. But his last name was Benedict. I think his first name was Andy. But we always called him Bendy Dick. You know, that's funny, right? Benedict, Bendy Dick. Or it's funny to, 12-year-old. And then, so I was thinking about that. I had a friend named Brian Falls. We all called him Fryin' Balls, which we all thought was funny, He thought was stupid, but we thought was funny. But the one I cracked up the most that I got, and it never stuck, it was just a funny name, was Body Odin. To this day, it makes me laugh, see? It was Body Odin. And it's like a stupid nickname, but it just cracked me up. It made me giggle. And still does. So, Body Odin. Oh, yeah, and then the derivative of Dasco is always disco, right? So, Tommy Disco. But yeah, I was just thinking about that as I move into the comic book, the indie sphere, whatever we call it. And I go, oh, there's this other guy everyone calls Odin. And I'm like, but I'm Odin. That's me. But it is still a relatively new thing. And if that's truly his last name, then he's always been, Odin. If he had a coach, it was probably Odin. So all my coaches always called me Dasco, It's funny. My grandpa used to call my grandma. He used to call her Dasco. And it was interesting. It was almost like a coach. He'd be like, Dasco, give me a plate of food or something like that. He was kind of demanding. It was old school and everything. But my grandma actually liked it. She told me, she's like, yeah, it's kind of a term of endearment that he calls me by the name that he gave me, And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And she said, if he's being extra sweet, he says Dasconia. I was like, oh, that's cute. But, yeah, so, and all my coaches call me Dasco, except my one. And he did this to both my older brothers. Because we all played, we were all big guys, so we all played on the line. And he was the defensive line coach. And he would say, Dascow. I don't know why. It was like a regional thing, or he couldn't help but say it. And he said it to both of my older brothers. And then when I got in school, he was also the technical drawing teacher and architectural drawing teacher. And I took both those classes. And he was like, when he would check your work, he would call you up, but he would call you by your last name because he was a coach. It was like his thing. But he'd be like, Dascow. And I'm like, Dasco, you motherfucker. Like, when are you going to get it right? You didn't get my brothers right. You didn't get me. Like, how many times do we have to tell you? So probably just being a dick. He kind of was a dick, but I appreciated him. He was a good coach. He ended up becoming the principal or assistant principal eventually. But Devin Anderson, he was definitely a line coach kind of guy, but yeah, Dascow. But every coach always calls you by your last name. That's just a thing. My point being, what's in the name, to me, it has special meaning, and the reason why I go by Odin now has very special meaning personally. I've talked about it before, but it's the reason why I sport a mustache. Everybody's like, oh, Odin the mustache guy, or greatest mustache in comics right now, or something, stupid shit like that, which is fine. I think it's cool. But what rarely gets talked about is why do I sport a mustache? Like, I never did just the mustache until fairly recently. And it's a tribute to my dad. My dad rocked a mustache and a soul patch pretty much my whole life. That was the look he went with. I think he saw a few Westerns and he's like, that's the look that looks the coolest. He was a cowboy himself, so that's what he went with. And so I was like, as a tribute to him, that's why I do it. It's his genetics that give me a good mustache, so that's why I do it. So anyway, that's the history of the name of Odin, and probably surprised a few people maybe that it wasn't until 2021 really 21, where I decided, okay, I'm going to revive Odin. Because I did it for the band thing, and I had some social media stuff that I had created just as Odin for music. And I was like, maybe those people will be potential comic book fans as I got into this mode of my life, wanting to create comic books. But I was like, it's not a pen name, it's my actual name, So even though I'm kind of shifting modes, that's me. So anyway, long little discourse about my name. So anyway, let's get to this. This was the first page I drew for Kill Them Dead. And I've had a few people really like the pencil work on these and ask when this launches again, because if you know the history, we launched once and it was a little preemptive and we had to kind of recoil a little bit and go, all right, let's realize we're biting off more than we can chew and not just hold on to people's money forever. So we refunded and said, we're going to go build this book and have more of it done and have better direction before we relaunch. So anyway, but as we did that, I ended up taking over the penciling duties, which I wasn't going to before that. And as I did, I started penciling pages, started sharing them out. And there was a few people who were like, when you launch again, I want a book that's just the pencil pages. And they always say the same thing. They're like, I love Skunk Artworks paints, but I kind of really like these penciled pages, and I may buy both, but you should have that as an option. So I believe we will, just because I've heard that a few times. But this was the first one I drew, and this is the Kill Them Dead story follows our main character, the Husk. The Husk is just a random soul, a dead, lost soul in the underworld. And we follow her story because, as if driven by fate, she becomes a catalyst for a big deity war. And in the midst of that, we have to find out why she becomes there. So it starts out, the first few pages were drawn by Dimitri, or Demi. I can never know what his name was, but... and his stuff was really good, but he had to back out, all this other stuff. He couldn't keep up with the demand. And then we got the original Magnificent Bastards artist, Samir Sameo, to start drawing some pages. And it became the same thing. They're not coming fast enough. And he's saying, I have too many other commitments, blah, blah, blah. And we're like, fuck, trusting other people, right? So we put the power back in our own hands, and I was excited to say, you know what, I'll pencil this. And when we pitched the idea to Skunk Artworks, he was excited. And that was kind of like the real the nudge that I needed to say, okay, I'll do it. Because I had other things going on, and, I could always find other things to fill my time. So I didn't necessarily want to, but I was very excited about the opportunity. But it's a lot of pages, and we'll get there. But as it stands, the first pages show Charon, the ferryman, in his boat, ending up crossing paths with Mark Antony in the underworld, in hell, and his boat. And their crews are monsters and zombies. And as they collide, they get into this epic battle. So where I picked up the pages, and there's talk about redoing the pages. I don't know if it's necessary. Our styles are different, but I really like the pages that are already done. So anyway, where I picked up the pages, we've got all these lost soul warriors, zombies, and monsters falling into the sea. It's the Sea of Lost Souls, basically. It's an ocean, and they're on these battleships. And what we were really trying to convey is that it's constant war, It's constant fighting. It's constant death, but nobody dies. And that's part of the name for part of the reason for the name of the book, Kill Them Dead. Nobody actually dies. It's just you're constantly at war, constantly getting destroyed, and you're just nonstop fighting. And that's hell. It's just like constant war. And so all of these warrior souls, as they're battling, are falling off the boats into the ocean, into the sea beside them. And as they do, they start getting intertwined and mangled up into what we were calling the Rat King, which is the term Rat King comes from rats that get their tails stuck together and they kind of become this ball of rat. And this was kind of the idea, was that these lost souls, these zombies, these monsters, all kind of like amalgamate into this creature that's called the Rat King. But since it's set in the underworld, it actually becomes like its own entity. But while that's happening, we have our main character, Husk, here. There's just constant war as Mark Antony's warship boards the other ship, and they're fighting. And in the midst of the fighting, her chains get cut. She was just a galley slave, basically, rowing the boat. Her chains get cut, and then we go up here. We've got the formation of the Rat King. I tried to draw this like a face, so it's all these bodies intermingling, but as you take a step back, it looks like a skull or a facial feature. And then we've got our main character, Husk, here, with her chains cut, and that's where that page goes. The second page I drew, which this was the one where I really started having fun and started going, let's really fill these pages with insanity, because there's a lot to tell. Because as this book is written, you have the page of artwork here, but on the left-hand side, you have the page of prose. So it's a picture book. It's not a comic book. There's going to be no word balloons on this. But up here, you see a faint hint of the worm dragon flying in the sky over the boat. And we have the Rat King now fully formed, rising out of the ocean or out of the sea to the ship behind it. We have the Rat King up here boarding the ship as other souls fall into the sea. And we've got the Minotaur, which is a lot of people's favorite character. So we had to do a lot with the Minotaur, however you want to say it. He's on the Charon ship, and then we've got a scene with him and the Rat King facing off here. And this was a fun one to draw because you get to draw the ship at like the scale. The Rat King's bigger than the Minotaur. And as they fight, here's the Rat King with his hand. It's like going like this. But his hand is made up of skeletons, of course. He's got eyeballs. He's got monsters and people all forming his body. But he's grabbing the Minotaur to essentially make him part of the amalgamation known as the Rat King. So we get there. The next page I drew, let's see, we got everything's like lighter up in this left-hand corner because of the light source I have up here. But now he's amalgamated into the Rat King. You've got the Minotaur here. Might be hard to see, but that is him. He's part of the Rat King, so he's been sucked in, but basically his head and there's bodies and everything wrapped around him. While that's going on, he reaches out. He's chasing the Husk down here. So after he gets amalgamated, he sets his sights on the Husk. And as he does, he's reaching out. These are his hands, reaching out to the Husk. There's battle going on around her. And while that's happening, she pulls a sword from the side that's just been stuck and planted in the side of one of these other soldiers, zombies, whatever. She pulls the sword out, cuts one of the fingers off of the Rat King, and the skeleton goes flying. But the Rat King does get a hold of the husk here. As you have a bird's eye view, while that is happening, the worm dragon is coming down to join the party. As he does, again, another scale shot here. You get to see the worm's head about to eat the Rat King. So we're going bigger and bigger and bigger. So you got the Minotaur. He's very big. He's much bigger than Husk. You've got the Rat King, which is much bigger than the Minotaur. And you've got the worm, is much bigger than the Rat King and the Minotaur as one. So as the new Rat King with the Minotaur is holding the husk, about to chomp down on her, you've got the worm coming in to chomp down on all of them. And as he does, he scoops up the newly formed Rat King. As he does, the husk is grabbed by the Rat King. So the Rat King's got her arm. They're flying away over the ship, as they are. Pieces and bits of bone and skull and guts are falling from the sky. And the worm is carrying everything away. As it is, you can see that the husk is grabbed by the hand of the Rat King. And then you get a shot of here of the worm turning and looking at us as camera viewers, as the audience. But you can see little bits and pieces falling into the ocean below. As there's the ship. And then the Rat King, in the jaws of the worm dragon, holding on to our main character, the husk here. The Rat King, the worm decides to bite down on the Rat King, sending bodies and debris and parts and eyeballs and everything flying away, including the husk here, who goes flying back with her sword in hand. And you can see the Minotaur there staring at her menacingly. But as she's falling away, she jumps, or she doesn't jump. She's falling, but she slashes the belly of the worm dragon. And then puts the sword in there. But the Minotaur still has a hold of her leg. And the gravity of that situation is that her sword goes slicing down the belly of the worm while the Minotaur has a hold of her. And all of that going on, they struggle, they fight. He bites at her arm that is holding the sword, bites it clean off, and Husk then goes falling, as does the Minotaur, because it was our arm that was the only thing holding it. But he does plunge his own axe into the belly of the worm dragon. And we get a nice lot of action here, and then you get to see the scope. We got our ship down here. You got the ocean, the sun setting. And as he does that, he's also slicing down the belly of the worm. This is the last page I've drawn for Kill Them Dead, by the way. Falling down, but as you can see, he lets go of his axe, grabs a hold of the tail. Well, he does that there. And is looking to grab the husk as she's falling like a comet from the sky. There she is, just falling. Lands like a very heavy thing into the ground below on the shores of what she does not know. The shores of the adventure that awaits her. Meanwhile, the worm, being tired of people slicing up his belly, sees that the Minotaur is holding his tail. He decides to whip his tail around to his mouth and take a little chunk. Take a bite. Try to eat that Minotaur. And that's where we leave it. as he's kind of like sidewinding his tail into his mouth. And then one more page before we move on to the next scene in the story. But I just kind of wanted to show you to see so you can get an idea of what kind of action can be expected from Kill Them Dead. And I'll tell you what, I'm having a lot of fun drawing these pages. Like I said, a lot of people have asked about a penciled version of the book with the pencils. But I mean, I've been getting pages back from Skunk Artworks of him painting these. And I know for him, he's really having a blast doing this, but it's also hard doing, working with someone else. He's so used to working with himself, painting his own stuff and things like that. So this is kind of new territory for both of us. And because I've never drawn anything for somebody who's going to hand paint them. And he's using oil paints, and they're coming out so vibrant and badass. And I just can't wait to get this all wrapped up. But as I show that, I want everyone to know, and I'm sure I've made this plenty clear, is like, these take a lot of time. This takes a lot of my time. It takes a lot of Sebastian's time. Skunk Artworks, whatever you want to call him. And the only reason I really mentioned that is because I want people to know, like, we haven't given up on this in one bit. Like, we love this book. We love the concept. We love the story. We love the style that we're going for. We're having a blast making it. So even though we had to backtrack on that first launch, I just want people to know that if you were interested before, hold that excitement, keep it close to you, because the shit's going down. We are making this. It's fun. It's badass. It's crazy, wild story. I will say that the action up to this point is tame compared to where we're going as the story goes along. But that is the idea. This is the underworld. It's like, it's nonstop hell. It's constant battling, constant fighting. It never ends. And so the action just keeps that pace, and it's fun. And it's going to be, I don't want to say a quick read because it's very long, but it's going to keep you moving fast. You're going to feel that pace as you go through this story. And hopefully you like the artwork. I'm having a blast making it. And I can't wait to be done with it. Not because I'm not enjoying drawing it, but because I just want to see it all collected. I want to see it in a book. So I'm very excited for that. Also, the music has come along very far, but that kind of hit a wall because that really like ramps up in chunks. We have several more songs to record vocals for, but in order to do that, I have to take time off work and go to the studio and all this other stuff. So when that happens, that'll be another jolt of excitement for this project, because the music is incredible. And I'm not just saying that because I'm in part of it. Like I'm excited to drop vocals on it because it's so well done. It's so good sounding. And I love being able to add vocals. Like, it's a stretch for me. It's a different style than what I've done in the past. But I'm loving it. Just like this is doing pencils like this rendered. I never do this. Like for the stuff that I make for Shove or anything that I'm inking, I never render pencils like this. So this is a stretch too. I'm like, normally I just can't wait to get to inks, because I'm like, I love inking. I love the contrast. Like if I could take this image and ink it, I would have so much fun. But when people are like, I want a penciled version, I'm like, that's pretty cool. It would be really cool, but it might take a little too much time. But to do a penciled version, an inked only version, and then the painted version, and offer all three, that would be super cool. But I don't know if we'll do that. But anyway, all that said, I've been rambling now. It's almost an hour long. Also getting ready for more potential tornado weather. coming up next week. It just never fucking ends here in the Midwest. I don't know if it's normally like this or what, but it just seems like it's like nonstop. They're like, yeah. And I love the crazy weather, but again, the tornadic elements, I'm like, because it's twice now that I've jumped into my fucking storm shelter. Both times no tornado hit me, but the one time it was really close. The other time it was close, but not like really close. So I'm like, is this just life out here? Maybe it is, but actually I'm sure it is, or it's going to be anyway. But yeah, so more of that weather coming up. But. Oh, and one last thing, if anyone's interested, and if you've watched this long, kudos to you. You're a trooper. I appreciate you. But when I was talking about doing the brakes on my car and I didn't have the rotor fitting on the back wheels, the answer came to me, and maybe I didn't mention it before because it makes me feel like an idiot, but it was an easy answer, which just makes me feel stupid. But so I got rotors, pads, and calipers for all four. Back, rear brakes, and front brakes. All four. Gonna do all of them. And they weren't really labeled. And I forgot, or I didn't think of it at the time. Like when it came to me, I went, you fucking moron. But the rotors for the front are different than the rotors from the back. The calipers for the front are different than the calipers for the back. And that didn't dawn on me until like way too late, much later than it should have. And when it finally did, I was like, oh, you fucking moron. So it dawned on me at work at like 8 a.m. So then all day I'm like, I can't wait to get home and just check and see if that's all it was. Sure enough, I tried the other rotors and like a glove. Yeah. It was an easy answer. So no grinding anything down, no doing any weirdness like that. That's all it was. And I feel like an idiot, but at least I figured it out. And at least I figured it out before I started grinding any weird shit down. So anyway. All that being said, I got nothing else. Thank you so much for checking out the video. If you made it this far, you're like my best friend, and like it surprises me that anyone would listen to me for this long. So if you did, part of me is like, why? But the other part of me is like, thank you so much. Like, it's just me rambling about shit. But if you did, I hope wherever you're at in life, whatever you're facing, whatever obstacles come your way in life, that you're facing them with power and confidence and courage and that great care for the loved ones around you, and then always acting in integrity. And if you do that, I firmly believe if you do that, that you'll get the more optimal outcomes in your life. They'll be more favorable, and even if they're not, you'll have a clear conscience and feel better about yourself. So that's all I got. Thank you again for checking out the video. Sign up for all this shit I put in the description down below, and stay tuned for the launches that are coming soon and more signups for other stuff. So lots happening with Broke a Compass Entertainment. I appreciate you guys. See ya.